Okay, so now we have the 0.22 microfarad film caps. They're blue. So that's C6, 7, 10, 15, 17 and 18. So you can see them here. Now here's C18 and C17. And you'll notice that the film caps aren't here. So this is a very important detail, and this is probably the more important part of this series that I'm shooting. When you have the 6mm microphone jack sitting up here, you'll notice that C9 and C8, which are just here and here, they're very large capacitors. They're the size of those circles you can see there. But if you've got this sitting here, then there's no room for those, is there? You can see there. So, what we need to do is that we need to move these capacitors. I'll just let you see the size of them. These ones here, we've got to move those giant capacitors from where they're supposed to be up here to where C18 and C17 are. And we won't be able to flatten them down and push them all the way down to the board like some of these components soldered in are. We're going to actually have to stand them up and push them over to the side over here somewhere. So we'll do that a bit later, but for the time being, where have C17 and 18 gone? Well, I'll flip this around, and you can see that I've soldered them on the back here, and the place where I've soldered them is where you see the leads poking through here in C9 and C8. So that's where it is. It's just on the other side of there. So there they are. Now this won't impact the function of the circuit in any way. These capacitors share the same traces on the board. It's more just a cosmetic thing, and so we can get this in here. So that nothing will be affected by it. You just flip them over and put them through here, and you can lay them down up against the board here. So I've just bent those leads at a 90-degree angle just there and laid them down so that when we have to fit them into the box here, you see there's not a lot of, we're going to be putting it probably down, here somewhere. So there's not really a lot of distance left to fit things in underneath the board here. So you've got to really lay them down. There you go. So we'll solder in those, and we'll get started with the next set of capacitors. So now we have the 470 microfarad 35 volt capacitors. That's C2, 3, 4 and 5. And they're these black ones here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, up until now, it hasn't really been important how we orientated our components, because we were placing resistors and some smaller caps here that don't matter. Well, with these capacitors, it does matter which way around you put them. And you can see here that there's a stripe on the side that's white. Now that stripe shows you where the negative lead is. So you can see that negative lead just poking out the bottom there. Now, on the board, next to the number, see, it kind of looks like this C9 and C8 here. There's going to be a little positive, and that's going to indicate where the positive lead should be. So, if this is our negative lead on the right hand side, our positive lead is just going to be here on the left. So, we can orientate it that way by feeding the positive leg through there. And it's really important to get those around the right way, particularly with these large capacitors, because if you don't, then these can explode. So let's just take a little care with getting that around the right way, and everything should be fine. Alright, so next we've got the 2.2 microfarad polyester film caps, C13 and 14. You can see these two guys here just next to each other. These ones, to my understanding, don't have any polarity, so you can orientate them this way just to be safe, because I know they work this way. Otherwise, put them around however you like. So next we have our DIP8 sockets, which are our sockets for our integrated circuits, or our op amps. So your op amp's just going to plug directly into that. There are a few key things to note. Firstly, mine came with their little pins pushed into a piece of cardboard like this. You can see the holes there. And some of the pins were just slightly damaged. So you can see one there. He's a bit mangled. So what I've done is, and just bear with me because I'll do it for you on the camera. I've just got a pair of light pointy nose pliers and just straighten that one out, just like that. There we go. And they come with a bit of a kink in each of the legs, but if yours is damaged, then just straighten it right out and try and get it as best as you can. So that one there looks okay now. The next important thing is, so these things have a little chunk taken out of the top. So I'll just get my little pointer here and just show you up close. So just there, you can see that there's a little bit taken out of it, and that's on purpose. That's to indicate where it should be placed on the circuit, in what orientation it should be placed. So if we have a look just here, you can see the outline, and it's got a little piece taken out of it as well just here. So we'll line those two up, so there and there, and we'll put it in that way. Now, I don't think it actually matters what orientation the sockets go in, but it does absolutely matter which orientation the op amps go in, because each of the legs on the op amp has a certain function. So it's really important to get the leg number 1, which is where this dot is here. It's important to get that the right way around when you put your op amp into the socket. So just for now, we'll pop this op amp in, and we'll solder them all in, and we'll move on. Just a little tip for when you're soldering in these op amp sockets. You can see the pins here. What I do is I just push flat this pin up the top, and then this pin down the bottom. Push those ones flat up against the board, and then that way it holds it in while I'm soldering it in. Because the worst thing is to actually be pushing down on that with a soldering iron and have the whole thing pop out of the back, and then you're left with a hole full of solder, and it can be a real pain in the ass to get that out again. So next we have is U6, which is a 12 volt voltage regulator, and this one is just here. So be wary of this one. It has really thick leads on it, and we just flip it over to the other side. Yeah, so when they come through, they're going to come out a fair way. So if you just bend maybe this one in this direction and then the other bottom one in the other direction, it'll be a lot easier to solder. U5, another 12 volt voltage regulator. So that's just next to the other one here. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so we've got diodes D3 and D4. Now, diodes have polarity. In other words, it matters which way around they go. So you can see here, if we just have a look at D3, you can see that little picture printed on the PCB there. And it's a picture of a little diode, and up this end you can see that it's got a bar. And if you look at the actual diode above the picture, this has a bar as well. So make sure that you get those lined up the right way around, just like the picture. And the same goes for D4 just here. So we have some more diodes, D1, 2, 5 and 6. And you can find those here, here, here and here. Also remember to make sure that the bar lines up with the bar on the picture of the diode on the PCB, because the polarity matters. So we have Q2, which is our N MOSFET, or metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. And that one I've popped in just here at Q2, and you can just sort of notice the orientation there. It's flat on one side and slightly curved on the other. Q1 is a P MOSFET, and we've soldered that one in just here. And you can see there that there's a metal backing on it, and I've faced that in that direction. And on the front, you've got a plastic backing there that you can see, so you can orientate it in that direction. red LED D7 is just up the top of the board here. And it should be pretty self-explanatory, sort of how that goes in. It can only go in one direction, so you're fine. So earlier I mentioned that we had a problem with capacitors C8 and C9. When we use the 6mm mic jack here, there isn't enough room if we leave these capacitors here. So we had to move them back down to here, where you can now see them. So first things first, I've put the integrated circuits, the IC, in their sockets, just because there's probably about another 5mm worth of height here with them in there. And what I've done is I've lent them over, and you'll be able to see once I change the profile here that it's pretty important to have those ICs in their socket, because you got to bend these at a 90-degree angle and then lean them right over until they touch the top of it. So two things, the polarity is important to make note of here. You can see here that this is the negative leg here. So I've soldered that one down into into place C18, and C17 is this capacitor across here. And I'll flip it around so you can see it better, and you can see that that negative leg is just on the other side here. So that'll be on the right hole, the right hand side hole. Yeah, can't really focus properly like that. So the other thing I've done is I've also put a bit of heat shrink on the positive leg of this capacitor so that it doesn't bridge with the negative leg here. The other positive leg of the capacitor. And I recommend that. You might be able to position them a little differently, but it's very important to make sure that nothing is higher than these capacitors here, because you're only dealing with about 2 or 3 millimeters of tolerance here when you fit this into the box. So I've been plugging in these op amps that you can probably see around the place in the background, and I thought I'd just go over what to do when you first take them out of their shielded bags. So they'll probably come in something like this to protect them from electrostatic discharge. So you take them out and they'll probably be embedded in a medium, like a bit of cardboard here I think we've got. And I'll just pluck that one out. But they usually need to have their legs bent so that they're 90 degrees. And I'll get the camera to focus. Come on, camera. There we go. Right. So you can see that these aren't at a perfect 90-degree angle. So what you'll need to do is grab yourself your pliers, or some people like to lean them up against the table that way, and just roll it and push them in until they're 90 degrees. I use a pair of pliers, but it's just as easy to roll them on the table. Here we go. And we just push that one in gently, and that's a little bit better. So what we'll do now is have a look at the orientation of it. You can see just up the top there that there's a little dot. That is leg number 1. And you want that to line up with this bit here. If I can get the camera to focus. There's a dot on the board right here. You just see it there. You want it to line up with that. So you're just going to pop that one in that way, where those two circles line up there.